Welcome to Keep Talking, a podcast by the Mental Health Foundation of Nova Scotia. I'm your host, Sam Madore. Keep Talking is all about having honest conversations around mental health, lived experience, and hope. In this episode, we're joined by Lorna Griffin Fillier, professional practice leader with Nova Scotia Health, and also the Vice Chair of the Mental Health Foundation Board of Trustees. Later in the episode, we'll continue the conversation with Foundation President and CEO, Star Cunningham. I'm so glad you're here. Let's keep talking. Please be advised, this conversation may contain discussion of suicide. I am here with Lorna Griffin Fillier. Hey, Lorna.
Hi, Sam.
Lorna, I want to dive right in. We're getting real serious real fast here. I want to talk about your work, and then I also want to talk about your association with Mental Health Foundation, but I'm more curious about you as a clinician and your work with Nova Scotia Health. So maybe you can give us a little bit of background on what it is that you do day to day with Nova Scotia Health.
Sure. So up until January, I was a clinical therapist with Nova Scotia Health. So mainly trauma-informed care, trauma processing, working with really complex mental illness. So that was about 20 years from NGO right up to Nova Scotia Health. In January, I actually switched to become a professional practice leader with we love Nova Scotia Health acronyms, so I will not use them. Interprofessional Practice and Learning, which we call IPP&L. So what I get to do now...
I already forget it.
Right, exactly. That's why we use IPP&L. So what I do now is really I'm a consult for the organization that helps support primary health care in scope of practice for their clinicians that they hire, their allied health, producing evidence and coming up with evidence in which to support scope and optimizing those roles. And mainly, I see it as a bridge between mental and physical health because we can't talk about one without talking about the other. And I'm out of the clinical role, but I still have a private practice. So I haven't left the world of that. But after 20 years as pretty much a trauma clinician, working with people around forced identity transition, relational trauma, attachment-based trauma, central nervous system dysregulation as a result of that, after a while, even as a therapist and as somebody who's skilled, you run out of compartments to store things.
Oh, what a great way of putting that. Run out of compartments to store things. Yeah. Okay.
So that was my point last year when you realize I want to show up in my life in a very particular way. And I can't do that if I'm still hanging out. In this pocket over here.
Okay.
So it's just a different way to use my skills. But I mean, how that bridges with Mental Health Foundation is that as a therapist, I was kind of brought in with that knowledge set, that skill set to be able to speak to some of the things that we do. While we don't provide the service, we absolutely get to inform what services are provided in the province. And so that's where my lens could be used and and just be kind of put to use, I guess, from a grants process. But then eventually I got recruited for other things. So
amazing. Yeah. Once you show interest, once you raise your hand on a board. Yeah. So you are currently the vice chair of the Mental Health Foundation board.
I am.
And you're also on the grants committee, as
chair
you mentioned.
Chair of the grants.
Oh, chair. Wow.
Yeah, I know. This year.
Yes. Oh, that's exciting. Yeah. And so just going back to your work a little bit and pre-transition to your new position, what would the day-to-day be for you? You know, when you talk about, do I say clients?
Yeah, sure. Clients,
patients that you see day to day. Who are you seeing without obviously giving too much info?
Yeah, so I was often the individual on the team, along with a couple of my colleagues who would become therapists for people with really complex presentation because they often involve trauma histories. And so personality disorder, psychosis, mood disorders, PTSD diagnosis, but not always. Sometimes it was complex trauma without kind of that diagnosis and that official one. And so what we realize sometimes as trauma clinicians about the DSM, you do have like the PTSD diagnosis, but there's so many other people out there with complex presentations that present in other ways. So for example, a lot of people I would see with borderline personality disorder would have trauma histories.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So it's almost part and parcel with that diagnosis and the people who were presenting. And much like the latter position that I held before I switched out of therapy, was working with people with central sensitization conditions and central nervous system disorders.
Oh, wow.
The commonality between those pieces is that you can have trauma and not have fibro, but very rarely do you find someone with fibro who doesn't have a trauma history.
Oh my goodness.
Or
That's
chronic
fascinating.
fatigue without a trauma history. So that's when my I guess not my excitement would be the wrong word, but my passion for the bridging of physical and mental health.
Yeah.
With emotional health, with psychological health, with relational health, really started to surface, and that became pretty much the foundation of what I've been doing for the last 6-7 years specifically, because I don't think one can show up without being in the presence of the other. So
That's so fascinating. And I agree with you 100%. And I feel like too, even within the mental health side of it, it's hard, I would imagine, to just have, but to have one diagnosis without those sort of interacting mental health diagnoses as well, overlapping.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we think about ADHD, for example.
Yeah.
So it gets thrown around a lot, right? Especially with our access now to snippets in social media and the kind of age of self-diagnoses. And so when I use the term ADHD, I'm talking about a specific set of criteria that people meet.
Right.
And so what we've noticed is that there's an increase of the presentation of ADHD, especially in females or people who present biologically as female. Because of that nature of productivity, of overdoing, of being all things to all people. And it worked when your body could keep up. So there was like a maladaptive coping that happened, right? And so it's like you got your homework done when you were a child. You loved the color-coded highlighters and everything was
Are you talking about me specifically? I feel like you are.
Right. And it was to keep your attention. But you were applauded for being organized and overproductive, right? And then that productivity, if combined with relational aspects or attachment and once again, not PTSD, but trauma-based high distress experiences where you then use that as an outlet to cope, you can see how maladaptive that becomes as an adult. So now I'm burning out. I don't have boundaries. I have difficulty in relationships. I find it hard to focus because it does present differently in females. And so the connection with mental health and physical health becomes so intertwined because there's an activation component to being on that much.
Right.
And to your brain working constantly and constantly because the way it thinks is just different. Right? It just uses different pathways. And so with that comes this influx of energy that is required for that output. And so we often see a correlation, especially in females, or people who present biologically as female. We see a deep connection between fibro and ADHD.
Wow.
For example.
Yeah.
And there's some really great research that's coming out around that. And so that's the piece that piques my curiosity. And then if we go into relational safety, if you don't feel or have never learned to be relationally safe, your system stays activated.
Okay.
Right? But it doesn't always look like energy. Sometimes it's a freeze state. So, yeah.
The reason I just laughed, it's not funny at all, is I relate so much to what you're saying right now. And I feel like we need to talk about this more because also from what you're saying about that, the pressure to be organized and be on and all of those things, once you get to a point where you can't keep up with that, you're still thinking that that's the expectation. That's where I need to be, even though you're not recognizing that your body just can't handle that anymore.
Absolutely. And you crash.
Yeah.
Right. And so I always joked with people probably almost my whole career that if I was to write a book, it'd be Boundaries, Not Bubble Baths, The Truth About Self-Care. Right? Because everyone's
TM. You need to trademark that right now.
because we talk about go home, have a bath, light some candles, just listen to some. I love all those things.
Yes.
But if we think about the part that takes our energy constantly, day after day, consistently, that doesn't allow us to replenish, it's actually the boundaries, the relational part. How much we put out. How much do we get back? How safe do we feel in those interactions? And so that's the piece that really piques my curiosity when it comes to trauma histories or distress histories or just complex relational histories is how did you show up in those places that has then informed who you've become?
Right.
And so that's a really big component. And you can apply that to a system level. You can apply that to an organizational level. You can apply that to any human interaction that occurs for whatever objective. How much energy do we put out in relation to what we get back? Right. That fills us, that actually balances us, that gives us energy as opposed to depleting us.
Taking it. Yeah. No, that is amazing. And you've mentioned safety a couple of times. So let's talk a bit more about your relationship between boundaries and safety. How does that unfold for you?
Yeah. So when I think about boundaries, it is not the implementation of a parameter on somebody else. Okay. So often, once again, online platforms talk a lot about what other people should do or should not do in relation to my boundary. That's actually not a boundary. So a boundary is what do I need to feel safe, whether or not you can give that to me. It is my flag in the sand. Right. Yes. So it is if we keep canceling, or if you keep canceling our coffee dates, I'm not going to show up. So I'm not asking the person to change. Maybe they have difficulty keeping time.
Sure.
Right? Yep. Maybe they have a lot on their plate. Maybe there's a reason why they're missing all the coffee dates. None of it has to do with them.
Right.
If you don't show up, I'm not going to be able to keep that. That's a really important thing for me. So I won't make another one. That's my boundary.
Yes.
And so when we talk about boundaries in reference to others, it takes the autonomy out of it. It takes the ownership out of it. It takes the intentionality of it. And once again, we're back looking at somebody else to dictate and determine how it is that we proceed.
Right.
Right? And so I never assume that somebody else is skillful. That's a rule I have.
I love this. Okay.
I never assume somebody else is skillful. And the moment you create boundaries that depend on someone else's skill level, we've already gone, we've lost it.
Interesting.
It's not going to happen. So going in and creating boundaries with regards to safety, in order for me to feel safe in a relationship, there has to be this alignment with my value system, who I am authentically, who I want to show up as, why these relationships help my central nervous system feel balanced. Because you can feel safety when it happens. It is almost like this warm internal hug.
Again, it's almost like a physical reaction.
It is.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we could talk about the vagus nerve for weeks on end. Gosh. Right? Yeah. That's a completely different conversation. What your body is responding to, though, is safety. Oxytocin.
Right.
The safety and connection hormone.
Yep.
Right? And so this is the piece that becomes so important for people to recognize about their own experience. When we spend so much time living externally, we don't actually get to know our own internal processes and what we need and how it shows up for us.
Yeah.
So having the skill in which to identify the moments you feel safe and what was different from the moments that you didn't is such a beautiful moment of insight. right?
And that helps to inform your
Yes.
setting of your boundaries. Correct?
Yes, because
Yeah.
then I know what I need. I know how I feel. I know
Yeah.
how I respond. I know what prompts me. I know what, I use this word loosely, what triggers me, right? All we're talking about with a trigger is a physical manifestation of a historical
Yes.
experience, right?
Yep.
And so when I think about safety, I think about all those ways that you're building knowledge to figure out what it is that you need to proceed well. Not going back, we can come up with 85 things that have been distressing.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in helping people develop skill and capacity and a window of tolerance in which to proceed in a way that keeps them safe. Relationally, physically, emotionally,
Right.
and being able to access that at the points in which they need it. Sometimes in trauma therapy, it's called resourcing.
Right. Yes. Oh my goodness, my brain is just firing here. Do you think that, and I spend a lot of time in the self-help world trying to, and
Love
I'm
it.
quote unquote fix myself. But do you think that the whole conversations that people have had around getting out of your comfort zone, stepping out of your comfort zone, does that play with that relation to fear? Because you should feel, or safety, like you should feel safe
And uncomfortable.
but also uncomfortable. Like, how does that sort of play into that? Because I know obviously you don't want to go too far to a place where you're not comfortable, or you're putting yourself in a place that you're not safe. But how do you think that sort of has played into that for folks, and our expectations of who we should be striving to be? That's a really wordy question.
No, because I think what you're getting at is the whole premise of that is dialectical thinking.
Yes.
Right? So that whole idea of both and can exist, and you can hold space for it at the same time.
Yeah, that's it.
So I can be both uncomfortable and attempting to build mastery.
Yes. Okay.
I can be both uncomfortable and feel safe. I can be both unsafe in this situation, and if I go through it, I develop safety. Right? So depending on the situation, and safety being different than risk. We're not just looking for opposites of things. We're trying to create this homeostasis in our body of safety, right? So my actions, my behaviors really, and my emotional responses, my relationships, more often than not produce safety. That's what we're after.
Right.
Changing the baseline.
Yep.
Not the moment, right? Because there are going to be moments of uncertainty, but I want my baseline to veer towards safety and connection.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And so if we think about things in terms of dialectic, your brain is then not forced to choose. It's either this or it's this. It's either good or it's bad. If I do this, it's going to be awful. Or if I don't do it, it's going to be great. And so if we can get our brain out of kind of that dichotomous thinking of up or down,
Black,
left
white.
or right, black or white, right? And we hold space for that dialectical kind of thinking, that middle path thinking. It allows the merging and or the layering of both at the same time. And your brain feels less cornered.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? So because it's not asked then in that moment to make that choice. It's going more through that kind of insight process as opposed to let's just get to the change part.
Yeah.
Right. And part of that also feeds into the idea of, acceptance, that, if we're thinking about being well, there's also a part of us that exists in this realm of acceptance. Like in this moment, whether I like it or not, this is happening.
Yes.
And acceptance is not agreement or approval. It's not saying, ooh, I like the risk or I don't like the risk. I want to feel safe. I don't want to feel safe. Like
it's just accepting that's where you are.
That's what's happening in this moment.
Yes.
And so then how we proceed is the part that produces the change. So you have the insight plus acceptance equals change, right? But we can't get to the change part if we don't do the work in those other two layers.
Right. I spend so much time in my head, and I know that I'm not alone in this, especially when you're talking about mental health. And so it's so easy to do the black and white thinking. If I go here, it's going to be bad. If I, all of those things. How do you shift that? How do you suggest shifting that for folks who do spend time in their heads and who do kind of default to that black and white thinking?
So there's a strategy or really, I guess, a phrase that I love to use, which is tap into the curiosity of something.
Oh, I love
when
that.
all else fails, ask a question. Because if you try to come up with the answer, it's leading you down the path of choose A or B.
Yes.
Okay. If you ask a question, you're not going to have that internal reaction or that cognitive reaction. So if you go, I wonder, what's the thought that I'm having? Oh, I wonder where that came from. Oh, I wonder what prompted that. There's no choosing yet. Right. And then the next question, if you're someone who feels closely with values alignment work, right? And kind of and by values I mean that compass. If everything else went away in your life but these things were present, you'd be the best version of yourself.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So kind of like that in a nutshell. And so my question then to people becomes, how is what I'm thinking, doing, saying, how are these things bringing me closer to who I want to be? Because if it's not,
Yeah.
I'm going to drop it.
Yep.
And it's not as easy as let's just drop it. But the more you get into that pattern of asking yourself, is this fill in the blank bringing me closer to who I want to be? And if the answer is no, none of us go, oh, great, I'll continue to do that.
Right.
Nobody says that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
In all my years
I
of
feel
therapy.
like doing that, but yeah.
Right? In all my years of therapy, nobody's going, okay, great. I want to continue to live in misery. Awesome. That was my goal. And so it just piques enough of that insight and that curiosity and that I have a choice. I can choose how I proceed. Right? Because a lot of people with these distressing histories come with this preconceived notion of who they should be, how they should feel, how they should show up.
Yeah.
How many times have been people who've been having deep emotional awakenings and responses as children been told they're dramatic
Oh gosh. Yeah.
or you're sensitive, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you learn after a while that I need to stifle those things.
Yes. Those are bad things.
That those are bad things,
Yeah.
right? They make me unlovable. They make me unwanted. They make people walk away from me. When there's a beauty in being a child and knowing how your body shows up
Right.
in a situation. And we tend to stifle that in children who don't fit this perfect little box, right? And then they end up as adult versions, not really paying attention to their intuition, their values, their alignment, who they want to be.
Because they've been taught or, shown to stifle that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that relational safety, am I safe enough in which to show you this part of me that has been dampened for the majority of my life?
Oh, man.
Right?
Yeah. I wrote it down. I love tap into the curiosity when you have, because it's important to take a beat.
Yes.
And sometimes it's hard to find a beat when you're so stuck in one way or the other. So find the moment to take a beat, or how do I shift my thinking in this moment? But if you think about how can I tap into my curiosity, that's a great mindset to be in. Yeah.
Well, I think it's because some people are very tactile individuals and some people will hang out more cognitively, kind of psychologically up here.
Yep.
And so we have a lot of grounding practices that are tactile for very good reasons, beautiful evidence behind them, like holding an ice cube or holding a rock, rubbing something, like those type of pieces. But for some people, they need that cognitive prompt. Important. So knowing yourself and what works for you, because you can go into a lot of therapy and you can get 85 skills and only 3 of them work for you.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
And you need to sometimes trial and error, figure out what is going to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when you find them, find like your go-to, right? And I often encourage people to find like 3 things that work for you and use them over and over on rotation.
And then that just becomes second nature. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's great. I love that so much. What do you do when you recognize that, you're running out of compartments? How do you find joy, or how do you shift yourself into a more positive space?
So I use skills every day. So yes, I've been a therapist, social worker, clinical social worker, whatever title you want to add.
Yeah.
But I've been somebody who's been immersed in the world of psychological health for 20 years. There's not a day that goes by that the person I'm sitting across from doesn't teach me something. And so
I love that.
I use skills. If my expectation is for them to use them, I use them.
Yeah.
And so every single day, depending on what presents, I use skill. And I have really great boundaries. I don't do meetings in the evening, with the exception of Mental Health Foundation, which Star knows she must
She's
mean
the
something
exception to
important.
the rule. I love it.
But I don't do things in the evening.
Yeah.
I live my life with the primary goal of connection in all things that I do, for meaning and purpose and alignment. But also my primary value is stewardship.
Okay.
I want things to be intentional and authentic.
Oh, I
so
love
that's
that.
just how I try to show up in the world. Every day is, different, and some days are harder than others. So I need to pull up more skill in which to bolster that. And even though I'm a therapist, I'm also a parent, I'm a spouse, I'm a daughter to someone who's chronically ill and in palliative care. I'm the sister of a sister who's going through chemo right now. I am the
Lorna.
youngest of 3 siblings. Like, we all hold our own things.
Yes.
The difference is I've worked so hard for 20 years on building insight that helps inform how I proceed.
Oh my goodness.
And so I try to go in with that intentionality. I also have a daily mindfulness practice. I have daily things that I do out of routine for health and wellness. But for the most part, it's really about that connection and not bombarding myself with access, but with meaning and purpose.
Meaning. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
And as someone who has not known you for long, I feel like you're doing it. You show up
lovely.
you show up as authentic every time. I've been in contact with you, and just the work that you're doing is incredible. And you're a connector of people, which I think is a great skill.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's my life goal. So I'm glad that it's visible.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
thank you for that. It's lovely.
We are continuing the conversation with Star Cunningham, President and CEO of the Mental Health Foundation. Hey, Star.
Hi, Sam.
We just had a chat with Lorna, and Lorna Griffin Fillier is
LGF.
I love it. Does she go by that?
No, I just made it
We're going to
up.
start it. She's just an amazing human.
She certainly is. You can feel her presence in a room. And we recently did a video that we shared at the Holiday Black Tie Gala. And it featured 5 different voices talking about the foundation. And I have to tell you, just hearing Lorna's voice and seeing her face on the video had an impact on people.
Yeah, there's just something. She's very approachable, relatable. She's just a great person. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to bring up is, and I might steal this, is the name of her book.
Oh, she has a book.
She's going to write a book.
Oh, she's going to write
She
a book.
hasn't written it yet, Star, but we're
Okay.
going to convince her to. If not, I'm stealing it. Boundaries, Not Bubble Baths: The Truth About Self-Care.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that great?
That is a great title.
Just the importance of setting boundaries and what that looks like for different people. Can you speak to that for you? Like, what does it mean when you say you're setting a boundary?
You're speaking my language because setting boundaries was something I never did for most of my life. So it's been a new thing to me over the last probably 8 years. And it's been the best thing I could ever do for my mental health and my physical health, my peace of mind. It's changed the way I go to sleep at night, It's changed the way I feel during the day. It's just so vitally important to put yourself first and to understand what you need to be healthy enough to help the people that you need to help in your life and do what you need to do.
100%. And knowing that, when you talk about self-care, yes, having a bubble bath is great. All of those things that folks talk about, getting your nails done, whatever that is for you. But when you think about setting boundaries being self-care, I don't know that language is used very often.
And it should be.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it should be.
And I'll definitely read that book.
Self-care is not selfish.
Yes, right? Yeah. Thanks, Star.
Thanks, Sam.